Hello, my name is Austin, and today I want to focus in on accessibility relating to color contrast ratios. There are a lot of people who have disabilities relating to visual acuity or vision loss, and it's important to keep in mind that those people can have difficulties accessing information on the web. And in particular, when you're looking at text and images on websites or documents, it's important to make sure that the color contrast ratio is accessible so that it can easily be read or discerned when you're using photos or graphs or text. And in addition, it can also be hard for just people who have great vision, but if the color contrast ratio is not set up where it's easy to read, it can still be difficult. So it should be kept in mind as well. So what I first want to kind of mention is that the Web Accessibility Content Guidelines, which is also called WCAG 2.1. So the WCAG standards are laid out using A, AA, and AAA. AAA is the highest rating, and single A is the lowest, and AA standard is usually what is sought after by companies and individuals designing websites. In addition, most settlements for OCR complaints tie back to the AA standard. Now, when it comes to AA and the contrast ratio, they give specific guidelines for regular text and large text. So what qualifies as large text is either 14-point bold or 18-point not being bolded. And basically, what you have are standards for large text and regular text. So for regular text, you're looking at a contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1 to meet the AA standard. If you're talking about large text, you only need to meet a standard of 3 to 1. And then if you are looking at the AAA standards, they start out with the regular text, with the large text at 4.5 to 1, and then the regular text is actually 7 to 1. And what's important to keep in mind, because you may not know what these numbers really mean, is if you have white text on a white background, that is actually 1 to 1. If you have black text on a white background, that is 21 to 1. So that's like the highest contrast ratio you can really have is 21 to 1. So if you're looking to hit 7 to 1, you can see that there is some room for different colors. However, certain colors are more difficult to hit fully AAA accessibility, especially with colors like red, sometimes can be tricky. Now, what I'm going to do is go over some different slides that show you how the accessibility is using a program called the Color Contrast Analyzer. So I'm going to demo that program, and then we're going to look at some text on colors, and we can kind of check out and see which ones are more accessible or less accessible, and understand how that works. And I really hope as you're going through this with me that you're gonna be thinking about your website or whatever you're trying to design and make, and thinking about how you can make it more accessible and by incorporating some of these ideas when it comes to contrast ratio.
So here we have some different slides with text, so we can kind of use the color contrast analyzer to explore these slides a little. So starting with this first slide, as you can see, we have the black on the white, and we get the ratio of 21 to 1 that I mentioned earlier. And if I drag this up a little bit, you can see that this passes all of the different accessibility checks. So we can see WCAG guidelines, AA, it passes, AAA, it passes. So we're meeting everything that we need when it comes to text there. Now, if I advance forward to the next slide here, you can see that this is a little bit more gray involved instead of black. Drop this in, and you'll see that the contrast ratio goes down to 7 to 1, which is what you need for regular text on the to meet AAA. and therefore we still meet everything even though it's a lot lighter than the black text that we saw earlier. So again, just comparing, this is the black and this is the lighter text. Now if we go too light, like this type of gray text, we will start to fail some of these guidelines, and we can see that here as we fail them all because this is only a 1:4 ratio, 1.4 to 1 ratio, which is very low because keep in mind white on white is 1:1. So therefore, because of this, you would want to avoid text like this. Now I mentioned red earlier, so let's take a look at red so we can start to understand how red can be problematic sometimes and how to work with it. So this is an example of red being successful. I'm taking the white now and the red, and you can see that passes everything but the regular text, and we're at a 5 to 5:1. So we are missing the 7:1 that is needed for regular text. But other than that, we are meeting all the other standards. Now, when you advance this to the next slide, you'll see that the red is lighter. And when you enter this bright red that a lot of people sometimes use for text or for backgrounds, that can be more problematic because it's very hard to get the contrast ratio high enough to meet even the AA standards. As you can see, this is 4:1, and to meet the AA for regular text, we need to hit that 4.5 to 1. So as you can see here, we're at 4:1, and then to meet the AA standards for regular text, we would need to hit 4.5 to 1. And having that bright red is very difficult because it really competes with the white text. Now I'm going to go to another slide here. This is another one that kind of fails, and you can see here when you have the black on the blue, we'll take a quick look at that now. When you have this black on the blue, what happens is that you end up having very low ratio. Again, this point it's 2.7 to 1, and it's difficult to see. Now what you could do is make it white, and if you make it white and we go back here and put the white text on the blue, you'll see we hit 7.9, and that's enough that we pass everything. So that kind of gives you some ideas there. So in the next example here, what happens is we have this background, and I'm going to go drop the background, and we'll drop the we'll use the dropper to get the text here. So we have red on this light blue, and we're really only passing the large text. We're missing the contrast ratio is not at 4.5 to 1, so we're not meeting it for regular text on AA. But what we could do in this case, instead of changing the background, you could also change the text. So if I change the text to black, suddenly we are going to go to one that passes everything, and we're at 11.7 to 1, which is a lot higher, and we meet that higher standard of 7 to 1 for AAA. So that kind of gives you an idea of how you could use this color contrast analyzer with your documents, slideshows, website, to see and kind of get an idea of what's accessible, what isn't, how easy is the text to read. So definitely keep that in mind.
Thank you so much for watching. If you have time, please consider clicking the description info in the video to see my Discord where you can send me questions, and there will be days listed where we can actually interact. And in addition, please consider filling out the accessibility survey so that I can learn more about you and how I can best produce content on this channel that will be relevant and helpful to you. I really appreciate your time and help, and I'll catch you in the next video.